Welcome, Missouri Tiger football fans. It is week 3 of the 2024 season. Number 24, Boston College, is coming to Memorial Stadium at Faurot Field to play our 2-0 Missouri Tigers, who are currently ranked 6th in the country. And for the big game today, we are piping in one of our sideline reporters. Those of you that are familiar with the Tossing Salad podcast hub and all of the content that we do, you guys will recognize the co-host of the Iller and Filthier show, Mr. Greg Eisenhower, is joining us from not Columbia, not Missouri. Where are you?
I'm in lovely Hudson, Wisconsin, just outside of Minneapolis.
The lone Tiger fan in Hudson, Wisconsin?
That's right. Yeah. You see a few of us running around. It always makes me almost wreck every time I see like a Missouri bumper sticker. I'm like, whoa.
You actually see Missouri stuff there?
I do. Yeah, I have. Yeah, that always freaks me out. But yeah, you do.
Bandwagon fans, you think, just because Missouri is good in the last couple seasons, or what?
No. They clearly went to college there.
The only reason why they would be repping.
I don't think we do. Are we a school that would have fans that didn't go to school there?
That's a great question,
you know what I mean?
Greg. Yeah, that might be something for us to break down the road, just to kind of see as Missouri, depending on what kind of happens through the season and the success of the football program. And we've talked before about there's just something in the cards that we're dealt, that we can either have a good football program or a good basketball program, but we can't have both at the same time.
Nope. No, it's not allowed. It's somewhere in the bylaws.
So going into week 3 here, Greg, let me ask you this question. Are you feeling pretty good at what you've seen from the Tigers so far this season after the first 2 games? First one was Murray State, the 51-0 win at Faurot, and then last week was against Buffalo, who also came into town. That was 38-0. What have been your thoughts so far?
That's what you want to see. I think when we first got good a long time ago, one of the things we always talked about was even on those Brad Smith teams, we would always lose those games you shouldn't lose. So to me, if you're a good team, that has to be the outcome of the first 2 games, when you're playing. And now today they're going to get challenged. You got Bill O'Brien. I forgot Bill O'Brien's there, very good coach where he's been. Professional coach in the NFL. So this will be a tough game. And Coach Saban, I saw some, he's on TV now and he's doing a great job. But yesterday he was talking about that he wants to see games like this where your team gets tested because he thinks it's better than, playing a game and you're winning 45-0,
Right. Which a lot of the top teams, I mean, they all kind of do it, right?
They do.
There's kind of a knock on the SEC sometimes where we schedule some of these lesser known schools, pay them $1.5, $2 million to come to our field, and then we kind of work some things out. I go back and forth on stuff like that because at the end of the day, if you're a team that's supposed to compete by the end of the season, and this year it's the college football playoff, which should be just amazing to watch unfold. Your number one goal has to be to have your team prepared to play by the end of the season when things kind of count. And not to say that the middle of the season, the middle of your schedule doesn't count, but you have to be playing your best football come October, November, December, and then hopefully into the 1st of January. And I give credit to the teams. And let's specifically look at like maybe the SEC teams that scheduled some tougher games at the beginning of the season. Texas A&M played Notre Dame a couple weeks ago. LSU played. Who did they lose to?
USC.
Was it USC in Vegas?
Yeah.
And
Alabama's up here taking on Wisconsin.
That's a big game. That's a traditionally big game between big programs. So I do give credit to those teams that schedule these marquee games early on in the season, but then I also, it's one of those things to where I kind of wonder, is it really the smart thing to do at the beginning? Because like if you're LSU and you've lost for the, what was it, the last 5 years, your
Right.
first game of the season, which is a big game, that puts you behind trying to get to where you're wanting to go.
I think, yeah, I'm with you. I don't mind. I think you need a couple of those games just to get I mean, that's essentially their preseason in some ways, right? The college doesn't really have a preseason like NFL does. So I've got no issues with that. And I think in the past, historically, you're better off playing a tough team and losing week one, like at Alabama we've seen, right? They may lose a week one game, but then they run the table.
Right. That was last year, wasn't it? The Texas.
Yeah. You'd rather lose early, but now this year it's completely different. I mean, there's a strategy. You know, they said they expect maybe some teams to, you know, if you're a 4th, 5th, 6th ranked team, you might rest players even towards the end of the season. Things that's never been done before because you know you're going to make the tournament. It sounds like the top 4 spots you get the bye. So, and then I believe I heard Coach Saban talking about the goal will be to be 5, 6, 7, and 8 because they host their first game.
Sure. Right.
So that he said that's where his focus would be, is how do I get to, you know, if I'm not in the top 4, how do I get to 5, 6, 7, and 8?
Yeah, that's actually another good point. They were talking about that in terms of that number 5 spot being the nice spot to have, and then they were relating that to Notre Dame at the time before Notre Dame lost
Oof, that was
to
tough.
what was it, Northern
Illinois girls' school, I think.
But yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch this kind of unfold throughout the season, and as you get closer to the playoffs, to where teams are starting to jockey for just getting in.
Yeah,
and as much as I thought kind of going into the season when they expanded it to what is it, the 12 teams?
12, yes.
That, you know, Missouri's going to have a really good shot of getting in there. Yeah. My concern is that's really not the case. I mean, is there a good chance? Yes, if they kind of run the table, they kind of control their own destiny of sorts. But I had a question last week, and I'll pose that to you right now. Do you see Missouri having any chance of getting in as a one-loss team?
I do, but I do think it'll depend on how the season plays out. If you have, because I thought I heard them talking this week on ESPN that they might be, you could see 3 or 4 teams from both the Big Ten and SEC. And I think so to your point, that's where it gets challenging, is who else has 1 losses.
Right.
Yeah, it is good. They're going to have to stay up in those rankings. They're going to have to stay in the top 10. Because I believe, what is it, all the conference champion winners, and then the rest is, was there like 6 or 7 conference winners, and then the rest are at larges, like 5 at larges or something.
Something like that. I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but
you're right. I mean, if you've got, however many teams end up with 1 loss, we're going to be fighting for a spot for sure. But that's what'll be cool to see what happens.
But you take a look at the issue the SEC is going to have now, right now, heading into week 3 of the season. It's nice as an SEC fan, you take a look at the top 25 standings, and within just the top 10, 6 of those teams are from the SEC.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wow, the SEC's not going to get 6 teams into the playoffs.
No. And they'll end up beating each other. You'll have that issue where somebody's going to knock somebody out, and every year, that's the challenge they always face, is when you've got Alabama, Georgia playing for an SEC title. It's always hard to see one of them's going to lose, and then like last year, they get left out, and they probably should have been in it.
Right.
Georgia, in my opinion, last year was still one of the best 4 teams, regardless of their schedule.
Yeah, I think Georgia actually was probably the best team last year, and I know that people that were upset about Florida State in that situation, who have gone really quiet this season. Georgia was the one I thought kind of got screwed out of the playoffs, just because like you
They're
said
too good.
earlier in the show, they just lost at the wrong time.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and they in that format they were using was very debatable because it literally said the best four teams,
Mm-hmm.
not, you know what I mean, not the highest ranked four teams. The it was the best four teams, and that's what caused a lot of stir on social media. Is like, oh, how can, but they lost. It's like, no, it's the best four teams. You know, so it'd be like the NFL at the end of the season. You take who's the best four teams versus, you know, how they played out. Now this year we get to see that play out on the field,
Right.
which is going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I think for the most part is no matter what kind of system that you come up with within college football as it appears kind of nowadays, with the 12 team format, you're going to get the top, undoubtedly the top teams are going to be in there.
Right.
The question is going to be the ones that are the kind of the next up, who gets kind of left out.
Yeah.
So in that case, then I probably don't have an issue. Even let's just say our beloved Tigers comes down to the end of the season and we don't make it in.
Right.
Well, we're not making it in because for sure we're definitely not one of the best teams then.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, top four, yeah, you could always argue. It seems like every season there was maybe one team that was kind of on that bubble there. But when you're at 13, you know, 14, 15, to me, that's a lot less of an argument. Like you said, there's going to be somebody, you know, a 12 and 13 kind of thing. But I think you'll see you'll realize who really belongs in there, you know.
Well, I think you're right there, and it's all not going to matter if the Tigers don't show up today at Thoreau Field. You know, going into this game, and it's kind of funny, it was one that I think a lot of us really didn't circle on the schedule, didn't really pay that much attention to. I know I didn't. I was more focused initially on the two games against Alabama and Oklahoma. And I had said early on in the season that for me, really the key game is going to be that Texas A&M game down there, simply because I can see that derailing our season. You lose that game, you're kind of done. I don't think that the Tigers have enough support within the votes to where you have a one-loss team that is going to, there's going to be enough people to make an argument to get them into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see that now with I'll say it, a general lack of respect on a national level, where you see power rankings from media pundits, people that have their own YouTube or online shows or whatever. And they're like, okay, these are the top teams in the country, the top 10. And more often than not, the Tigers aren't even in there right now.
Right. Right. Yeah, you just got to keep winning. That's the message, right? It's always if we win, and I think if Luther keeps having an awesome year and gets his name up there in the Heisman's, I mean, that guy, he should be a number one pick, right? You know, from the wide receiver position. I think he's the next guy that's going to go in the NFL and make a stir.
Well, you got the kid out of Colorado that has something to say about that, though, right?
Yeah, no, not number. I don't think he'll be number one overall per se, but I just mean he'll be the number one receiver, right? Like taken off the board, and I just think he's the next guy.
Well, but do you see him going over Travis Hunter?
Maybe.
I see. I mean, everything I've seen from mock drafts, with the exception of one poll that had Burden as the number one overall. Has Travis Hunter as a top 5 for sure, and then Shedeur as a quarterback. You know, he's top 10, but who knows what's going to happen with Shedeur this season? I could just.
Yeah, that team is interesting, but Luther, I think, just seems to be one of those more true traditional, just number one receivers. You know, and he's just got to keep having a big year. If he's electric and is making plays and getting talked about, I think that helps Missouri's chances both at winning and maybe getting in the tournament, just out of excitement. If he's got some buzz around him, you know, and Brady too. I mean, Cook's one of those guys that's been in the program for a while, so he's experienced. You know, that I think he can continue to shine.
Well, speaking of Luther Burden and going through the first two games, he's got less than 100 yards of receiving, but he only played half the game on Buffalo at the Buffalo game because he was, I think, came down with something. He was sick, wasn't feeling well. They went ahead and pulled him, which was the right move.
Yeah.
Going into today's game, I believe all of the big pieces are available. Burden is there. He is expected to play.
Yeah.
I think Norfleet, the tight end, who they kept out as a precaution because of his shoulder, he's back, and he's an important piece in this offense. But yeah, I agree. Burden, I think as long as he just does what he is capable of doing, he's going to be a high, obviously, first-round pick in the NFL. And coming into this game, I think this is a kind of a setup for him to have a big stat game.
Yeah. He's Coach Eli was on ESPN about 30 minutes ago and really talking about how he's utilizing the special teams game.
Yeah.
So him as a punt returner is what he was talking to the guys on College Game Day about what sets him apart, and they're trying to put him up in that Reggie Bush, Desmond Howard, those flashy guys that used to be so fun to watch.
Right.
Even our guy, who was our guy that
Macklin?
Yeah, Macklin, when he would just be so explosive in that. And so I think that's what that'll get him extra highlights, right?
I think it'll get him extra highlights, but I understand that side of it, right? You want to get your big playmakers the ball as many times as possible in different areas of the game, different facets of the game. I'm just super nervous about putting him in situations to where he could get hurt. And I know this is football. You can't wrap him in bubble wrap. But I just, on special teams, kick returns, punt returns, we do have a lot of special, talented, speedy guys that can handle stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like if we're taking an unnecessary risk for the potential of some big highlights.
Yeah.
But I think you can kind of get those consistently elsewhere while just kind of making sure that your number one receiving piece on the chessboard percentage-wise is going to remain healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. But I feel like you see that a lot in college, though. A lot of these guys in college do play the special teams and then that next step in the NFL, they do take them out of those positions a lot. But in college, man, they let it rip, it seems like.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Travis Hunter playing both sides of the ball.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of guys that wouldn't want to do that probably.
Right.
But yeah, I'm all for it, man. Let's see him tear it up and have some fun out there.
Well, I think, Burden is due for a big game, just like Theo Weiss last week had over, 12, 13 receptions, 100 some odd yards. I mean, he was like the go-to guy, and that's kind of the luxury that we have on the Tigers right now to where, I mean, the receiving core goes 4 or 5 deep.
Yeah. Line them up, man.
We've joked around before. So Greg and I are Missouri alums back in the 90s, and we've seen the highs and we've seen plenty of the lows with our program. And just on a competitive level with the big boys over the years, we've had our kind of superstars, we've had our top athletes, but our problem is the depth. We may have 1 or 2 guys, but then there's nobody behind them. This year, I know Drinkwitz he's kind of focused in and mentioned the depth at a lot of the positions and what comes with that as the season progresses and you start getting into SEC play. And I know the one thing that he had talked about was last year, we were pretty much down to just being able to use 2 linebackers.
Right.
And which they, were pretty thin there. But, I mean, top linebackers, but nobody behind them. And this year, he's he thinks he's got enough guys to rotate into where they can be impact players. You see that on the receiving core. Defensive backs, I believe that Drinkwitz has said that they are comfortable with at least the top 3 to where they can go man-to-man if they need to. So it's a luxury that you're starting to see a program like Mizzou. All of a sudden, we're kind of looking at each other like, are we a top premier team?
We are right now. I mean, it does have the feel of the Pinkel days when we had, quarterbacks in the chambers. We had, we were defensive line U for a while. I mean,
yeah.
And we're starting to feel that, like he's starting to get that again, where we're starting to see, you start putting guys in the NFL, and that's what attracts the attention of the younger players.
Right.
You're visible.
It can happen. That's the selling point.
Yeah,
you come to Missouri, you're not going to be where, you go to Alabama, you go to Georgia, there's a lot of competition just to get playing time.
Yeah.
Top athletes, if they want to come to Missouri, they can actually play, make an impact, and get seen and drafted.
Yeah. And it's a fun offense. And I think, that's it's so easy for kids now to be seen on TV. The game's so different with networks and everything. A player can go to a Missouri and know he's going to get some exposure, and especially in a fun offense, we're going to probably start seeing more of those electric players.
Right.
I expect we'll have quarterbacks, receivers. When you're running, like you said, 4 or 5 wides a lot, I mean, you're gonna get playmakers from all across the country. And the line he talked about today on TV about the offense and defensive line play is what he said has changed for the program. Is they've built a line on both sides of the ball that can compete in the SEC. So I think they're setting themselves up, but it's now you just got to be relevant, right? And try to get in these playoffs.
Try to get into playoffs, and that's going to come with we're going to find out. I think today is that first kind of major test of the season, just to see, okay, is Missouri, are they going to be there as a name that should be going to the college playoffs, or the college football playoffs? So we're going to find out today. Just if they're as good as a lot of us say that they are, it should be we should be able to see it today. With a good team that came out in week 1, beat Florida State, as much as we'd like to say, well, Florida State's not very good. That's relative to the top programs. I mean,
that's a big program.
I like beating down on Florida State just because of the complaining from last season. But they are a good team when you compare them to everybody else.
Well, they were just undefeated last year, so
they were just undefeated last year. So Boston College going down there to Tallahassee and beating them that first week put them on the map. So this is going to be a big game for Missouri. You mentioned the Missouri offense. For me, going into this game, that's what I'm focused in on for today's game, and more specifically Brady Cook.
Yes.
Because, and here's what I'm breaking down, and then I'm curious to see what you're looking for in this game today. The first 2 games that we played, Murray State and Buffalo, it is what it is, but the defense as a whole did exactly what they had to do, right? There was nothing necessarily that you saw from the defense that you're like, even though the opponents weren't, at a certain level, you didn't see a lot of really major mistakes or seeing areas to where you're like, there's some question marks here.
Right.
They did what they had to do, in addition to shutting out the 2 opponents, which hasn't been done in since like 19 back in the speakeasy times, back in the old days.
The old days.
What my concern has been, and it's just a minor concern, but it's one to where when we put in our college football playoff hat to be like, is this team legitimate? Is on offense. And when you look at, okay, we've scored 51 and then we scored 38. Yes, that's some good numbers, but I think that is kind of masking a little bit that Brady Cook isn't totally comfortable yet. And I'm not saying that there's a question mark whether he can or cannot do it. My thing is knowing he's not at his peak performance yet, which you can't expect everybody to be peak week 3 already, right?
Right.
But Cook has struggled a little bit with the pass and some of the deeper plays that he's really kind of worked on this summer. So my focus today is this is going to be a different game, a good test for Brady Cook, because the game is going to be on the line for most of the game.
Right.
Whereas the pressure from Murray State and Buffalo, the game's in hand. You're not going to lose. So the nerves aren't the pressure's not there for them.
Right.
Today, the pressure's going to be on because the game's going to be kind of a toss-up for a while.
I think so.
My focus is on Brady Cook. I'm curious, what are you looking for today's game?
Yeah, I think this is one of those tests you're looking for. This is going to be similar to a game down the road. You're going to have, like you said, I think the game's going to be close and you're going to have to battle. So that'll be a good test for our guys. But I think I think they can come through. I'm looking at like a 24-17 kind of game. Maybe it gets up to like a, 31-28 kind of thing, but I think it'll be tight. But I think I can see the guys pulling through, man.
I think the line they're saying is Missouri 15 and a half points.
That seems like a lot.
It does and it doesn't.
Yeah. I suppose.
I'm just thinking, I think realistically, you're probably going to be in that area. I think Missouri will probably offensively, if they can get 30 or above today and Cook looking strong. And the great thing is he's got a really good running game behind him, so it's not all on him. But I think if Missouri's offense can put up 30 or more on BC, and I'm kind of okay, and then we're also going to find out, okay, is this a top defense? We're going to find out.
Yes, I agree. I do. I gotta get on the private jet to head down to the game here in a couple of minutes. Brian sent the iller and filthier jet to me, so I'm gonna try to get down there and watch the game. But so I've got to run in a minute here. But I'm stoked to watch the game. Should be a fun afternoon of football.
Yeah, it's going to be super fun. Greg, I appreciate you taking a little time, carving a little time out for your Mizzou brothers and sisters that are out there getting ready for the game. The kickoff is 11:45 a.m. Central Time. And for those of you that don't have access to watching the game, I know there's some issue with DirecTV and ESPN or something. Just know that the first couple weeks of the season so far, and I'm not promoting this, I'm just saying it can be done. If you just do a search on YouTube, there are plenty of pirated streams where you can watch the Missouri football game. They may get shut down during the game. You just do another search and just go to a different live. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but if you're wanting to watch and you don't have a way to do it, that's your way to do it. Greg, I appreciate you hanging out pre-game, and we'll have to compare some notes after today's game.
Sounds good, brother.
All right, MIZ.
ZOU.